So you compete in your local area, and then if you win locally, you get invited to Memphis to compete in an international setting.
Mhm.
And you'll actually see right here, behind me, we have BB King, you
Mhm.
know. So I'm really drawing on, even though I'm kind of viewed as a so-called jazz musician, to me, everything is, there's only one thing, and it's blues. Everything is blues.
Mhm.
There's no other, there are subcategories within that if you want there to be. But if something isn't blues, to me, it's not worth anything.
Mhm.
So, my background is I met BB King, I hung out with him, I learned a lot from that experience. I saw him front row 3 times. I've spent a lot of time tailoring my work to be compatible with, his vision and his message. When he passed, Iron City made a tribute record to him, which still is my favorite record that I've made. It was 10 years ago. Um, so I have you know, I am as authentic a blues musician and a blues torchbearer as anyone I've ever met. And it's time for me to, like I said, adapt a little bit different skill set, appeal to an audience that isn't the straight ahead New York jazz audience, and to bring the message to a different group of listeners. Music. So right now, the band is going to engage in competing for the International Blues Challenge.
Mhm.
So I've written, just a couple days ago, I've written the first song I've ever written, which
Mhm.
contains lyrics. So I took an existing blues composition that I wrote, I don't know, two years ago, and now I worked with a lyricist to write lyrics, so we have a better chance of winning this competition and going to Memphis and competing in a blues challenge. So that's not even hard bop. That's not even, what I'm really kind of known for. So right now at this moment, I have Iron City, which is the core of my sound, which is like a hard bop organ trio situation. I have the Griot Speak, which is sort of an avant-garde and ancestral music situation. And now I'm actually steering the band into a straight ahead blues presentation.
Mhm.
So the key to that is to retain all of the characteristics of Iron City, but to tailor it to that audience. So because I'm a confident composer, I'm able to adapt my arrangements and my compositions in a way that's going to attract the good attention of the judges and of the audience of a more rock oriented blues audience.
Mhm. And you're connecting jazz with all that too.
Well, yeah. So I'm not changing what I do.
Mhm.
I'm adapting a new bit of a skill set in order to be more um to meet that audience halfway, right? So I often get the criticism when I try to quote play blues that I'm too much like jazz.
Mhm.
These are all ridiculous, naive, somewhat insulting comments, right? Because my perspective on the whole thing is, this blues challenge, you have to have a vocalist to compete. I tried to compete last year without adding a vocalist and just using my instrumental compositions, and we were immediately eliminated
Mhm.
because we lost all the points. We were penalized for not having a vocalist.
Mhm.
So my critique of the situation is, so the blues foundation is saying that Dizzy Gillespie couldn't compete, Charlie Parker couldn't be a part of this, Miles Davis, John Coltrane can't be a part of this, Count Basie can't be a part of this, Jimmy Smith can't be a part of this because they're instrumentalists. So I'm not changing what I'm doing at all. I'm simply adapting a little bit of a new skill set, working with a vocalist, collaborating with a vocalist, in order to um, be on more of a familiar setting for the people I'm playing for, and then bring them along with what we do.
How hard was it for you to find your vocalist?
very hard. And in order to find a vocalist who is a different genre from us, if you will, somebody who sings more in a blues tradition, but who can step into the situation and excel with the way that jazz musicians operate, like I send them arrangements, they sight read them, you know what I mean? And they play it perfectly. That's different than what most bands, people who like are involved in this sort of battle of the bands do. They rehearse a lot, they come up with different parts, they don't use sheet music. So they operate in they put their thing together differently. So it has been very hard to find somebody who wants to compete, wants to go to Memphis, has an expression that we click, right? But luckily I live in New York, so there's a lot of people here, and there's a lot of people who are hungry to succeed. So we're working with someone now named the Fabulous Miss G, and she's great, and we're going to go down and we're going to win, and it's going to be fun.
What about your album Big Boss?
That one is the one that people always seem to like the most. I get a lot of radio play still with I did an arrangement of Spoonful, and that's a tune that doesn't have a chord progression. I superimposed a chord progression over it. So I took this tune that Willie Dixon wrote, and it's a vamp, right? It's a single chord. And I took it and I turned it into like a 1960s R&B. I superimposed a chord progression over it. Because that was one tangible thing I learned from Yusef Lateef. He's got a whole book, one of his books, there's pages of different chord progressions for blues that aren't your typical 12-bar blues chord progression. So that really taught me that blues isn't a chord progression as much as it's a vocabulary. So if you have mastery over chord, over harmony, you can superimpose different melodies. So that's an example of a very blues scale melody, which doesn't even have chords. I was able to take it and harmonize the melody and create entire chord progression where none existed to begin with. And it just sounds like a regular, blues song that, I don't know, Otis Redding would record or something.
It sounds like working with language, the blues language, and creating art from it.
I think so. I think it's a vocabulary and it's a language. Yes.